What's going on, guys? Pokey here with another Project Nova update. In this episode, we're going to talk about the progression systems for dropsuits and weapons. Do keep in mind, however, that this information is kind of building off of each other, so I do suggest you watch episodes 1 through 3 before you start here. We're going to be discussing how progression worked in Dust and how progression will work in Project Nova, and this is primarily to kind of point out some key differences between the two games. So in Dust, there were 3 primary ways that you could earn SP, or skill points. So first of all, you had kind of what I call normal passive SP. So this was earned at a certain rate per day, so like every minute you would gain a certain amount of normal passive SP. And you would accumulate this regardless if you were playing or not. So if the game was off, if the game was on, if you were in match, you always experienced a certain amount of SP gain 100% of the time. The next part was active SP, and this was kind of earned through actions you would take inside a battle. So if you were getting kills, if you were healing teammates, if you were completing objectives, all of these actions would earn you a certain amount of experience. It wasn't a set amount, but doing well in a match would effectively earn you more active SP. And the last type was kind of in-battle passive SP. So how this would work is that as you were playing in a match, you would gain an additional amount of SP for every second you were in the match. So if you were just sitting there doing nothing, you would still be earning a certain amount of passive SP on top of your normal SP. So through all of these 3 different types of experience, they would all kind of go into this unallocated SP pool, which you could use to spend on skills later down the line. So in Project Nova, things are a little bit different. So the in-battle passive SP is gone. This unfortunately rewarded players to just simply go into a match and then AFK, because they'd still be earning a passive amount of XP on top of their normal passive just by sitting there. So that is being removed. So the key difference here is that if you want to earn additional SP in match, you have to actually play the game. So that being said, active SP is still absolutely in the game. The key difference, however, is that as you're doing these actions in match, as you're earning SP, it's not just going to this unallocated skill point pool that you can use later. Instead, the item that you are currently using is what the experience gets applied to. So, for example, if I am running with an assault dropsuit and I want to, earn SP for that assault dropsuit, I have to actually use it in battle. Or if I want to, say, work on leveling up my assault rifle, I actually have to use that assault rifle. It doesn't just go to this generic unallocated SP pool that I can spend on perhaps something I wasn't even using. I actually have to use that asset if I want to level it up now. But to be clear, the developers are still considering keeping normal passive SP into the game. So that was the SP you would earn just passively, even if the game wasn't running, just kind of a constant slow trickle of experience that you could use. It's not clear if that SP goes into an unallocated pool or not. We'll have to see what they finally decide on when the game comes out. So the next thing I want to talk about is dropsuit tiers. So in Dust, there was typically a core skill for a given dropsuit, and as you leveled that skill up, it would unlock new tiers of that suit. This is the standard, advanced, prototype, those tiers. And typically these dropsuits had the same base stats, so they have the same slot layout, the same base HP, the same speed, mobility, but the big difference was the fitting resources. So a prototype suit, which was a high tier suit, would have a lot of fitting resource, where a standard suit, which was lower, would have less of it. So that was the primary difference between the tiers, was the amount of fitting resources they had to work with. And this was important because those additional resources would allow them to fit higher tier modules, which is ultimately what made the suit more powerful. Project Nova works a little bit differently. So as we talked about before, dropsuits are unlimited and they are not consumed when you die or at the end of the match. In a way, you can kind of think of your dropsuit as more of a blueprint that is never consumed, and that the IST cost associated with dying is actually the material cost needed to take that blueprint and manufacture a physical suit that you can actually use in the match. That being said, Project Nova doesn't actually have traditional dropsuit tiers like you would have experienced in Dust. Instead, you're going to have the same blueprint that you're going to work with throughout your entire career, but when you're using that blueprint of the dropsuit to manufacture dropsuits, you are taking them into battle, you're earning SP, you're taking that experience and you're effectively researching and upgrading that same blueprint over and over and over again over time. And so what happens is that that blueprint improves, it becomes more powerful, and in turn, the manufactured dropsuits that come from that blueprint actually get more powerful as well. So the developers haven't explicitly stated this, but just going off of kind of the mindset that Rattati has regarding how dropsuits should evolve over time, our best guess is that that blueprint isn't going to actually change in base stats. It's going to have the same base HP, it's going to have the same mobility, but instead, as you upgrade it, you're just going to get more and more fitting resources. So as I upgrade my dropsuit, I'm going to be able to fit more stuff on it over time. And that's really where the progression and the strength comes in upgrading your dropsuit throughout your career. And for the record, it is unclear if the ISK cost associated with dyeing is actually going to increase for a more upgraded dropsuit. That isn't quite clear yet. We'll have to kind of see how that detail evolves when the game comes out. So I want to talk about weapon progression now. So weapons in Dust work in a very similar fashion to dropsuits in Dust. So you'd have a core skill that would unlock higher tiered versions of the gun, as well as weapon variants such as a burst fire version or a semi-automatic version. And higher tiered weapons typically just did more damage than the lower tier counterparts. Nova's weapon progression is a little bit different as well. Like the dropsuits in Nova, you have to use the weapon in order to generate experience for it. The difference though between weapons and dropsuits is that the gun itself is not actually upgraded. So you still have this blueprint, it never runs out, but you're using it to manufacture physical copies of the weapon. The difference here, though, is that you're not upgrading the weapon, it's not necessarily getting more damage over time. Instead, as you earn experience, it's going to unlock a lot of modifications and attachments, such as scopes, barrels, and stocks. Note that these modifications are not direct upgrades to the weapon, and you should really treat them as side grades. So every modification and attachment is going to have both a positive effect and a negative effect. For example, a particular magazine attachment may increase the magazine capacity, but also increase the time to reload. So players are going to be encouraged to kind of mix and match these attachments and find what is optimal for their particular playstyle, but it's not necessarily going to be I put these attachments on and now the weapon is objectively better in every way than the base version of it. The developers have also mentioned that some weapons will have to be earned by gaining standings with a particular group. Just as an example, there could be a gun that was manufactured by a certain NPC corporation, but you'll actually have to execute missions for them and earn contracts and build your standing with that corporation before you gain access to the blueprint that is going to be used to manufacture that gun. And finally, I want to talk about skill trees. So in Dust, you had a centralized skill tree where you would take your unallocated skill points and you would spend them to unlock and upgrade particular skills. Many of these earlier core skills would apply across multiple dropsuits and weapons, with later skills in the progression being a little more particular, more specialized for certain suits and certain weapons. In Nova, however, like we talked about before, you don't have skill points going to some unallocated skill pool. They're being applied directly to a weapon or a dropsuit. And as such, there's no centralized skill tree with core skills that are going to apply across multiple dropsuits and weapons. So instead, players will use these skill points that they've accumulated on that given suit or weapon to unlock specialized skills that apply specifically to that asset. These skills will be more tailored to that type of role that the class plays. So, for example, a logistics suit would likely have skills associated with repairing dropsuit armor, supplying ammo, and providing mobile spawn points, whereas an assault may have skills associated with weapon handling, mobility, and damage output. To be clear, under this system, training a skill on one class will not provide a benefit to other classes. Skills trained on a dropsuit apply specifically to that dropsuit and nothing else. Unfortunately, this is a situation where the devil's in the details and we don't have access to more specific information regarding these skill trees, so we will have to keep an eye out and see exactly how this evolves over time, because I think it's very important to how overall progression is going to work in the game. And with that, I'm wrapping up this Project Nova update. Catch us next time as we talk about changes coming to the fitting system. And remember, for all of your most up-to-date Project Nova news, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe to biomast.com.